Good morning, everyone. Microphone check, screen check. Looks like everything's working correctly here. Yeah, good. Welcome. All right, sorry about the delay. Adobe was giving me issues this morning, but we got that all taken care of. Before we jump on in, as always, on the left side of the screen there, make sure to read through the Live Trader Morning Prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside there. If you want to read through that with a little bit more time, you can download that PDF right at the top of the Live Trader login screen. One way or another, though, make sure to get a hold of it, read through it. That way you're on the same page as everyone else. If you aren't a member of SSFTG or a part of the YouTube family, check out the join button below the stream to gain access before our next private webinar, actually upcoming this weekend. Get access to the SSFTG Discord chat, not to mention the awesome badge next to your YouTube name to show your support and a boatload of other things. If you're trying to figure out what it is exactly that we are doing, look no further than the Day Trading Academy over on SSFTG. It's got about 19 plus hours of material loaded for you, and that collection continues to grow, and that doesn't include all of the other videos and everything else too. Please keep in mind that YouTube on the broadcast side of things does have between a 3 and 30 second delay, depending on when you're logging in, where you're logging in, etc. So that can definitely impact things. If you want to level up to the VIP status, though, you can enjoy exclusive permanent access to our non-delayed live analysis stream via the Zoom Direct Meeting side of things, as well as the monthly VIP webinars. Again, that one's upcoming this weekend. Private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here and you're totally new, or you're a veteran over on the VIP stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you here with me today so we can rock and roll into some markets. So let's take a look at some news, take a look at some charts, see what's going on for today so that we can rock and roll into this lovely Monday of ours. So don't forget to grab your morning DP levels. Those are posted for you there this morning. Grab all of those so you're ready to rock and roll. And then along with that, we also want to see what is the news for today. Now, as far as the news is concerned, get that one out of the way there, we can see that, well, I mean, yeah, there's not much, nothing, actually. Investing.com had some minor things at 1:30, at 11:30, you've got the 3 and 6 month bill auctions. There's nothing happening. As far as the news calendar goes, totally dead. There's not a single thing going on. So we don't have to worry about that side of things at all. Looking on the Nasdaq side of things first, and we'll start off there. We've got more continuation, but I mean, honestly, yes, they're making highs. Like on Friday, they made a new high and a little bit of a lower high, but this is still a range. We're still stuck up here. The market's not going anywhere. If we look at the overall volume cluster from the bottom back to the top, that will kind of give us an idea as to what's going on. Unsurprisingly, the volume node is up at the top, but the POC is at 14,010, which is actually just below settlement price. And that creates a pretty large level of resistance, but that's also demonstrating how we have a very large ramp up into the highs and huge accumulation volume. And if you remember, one thing that I always talk about, accumulation volume typically shows up in threes. Well, 1, 2, 3. I mean, I guess 4 if you wanted to go down there, but we have a very firm accumulation phase that's going on off at these highs, and the majority of that resistance is built up off 14,010. Whether or not that's going to stick, I don't know. The market's obviously incredibly bullish, and buyers are buying every single dip they can get their hands on. But as it stands, with this market continuation back to the upside and the pullback potential that we're seeing, and the fact that there really hasn't been much of a pullback in the bigger picture, which we could desperately use, there are a lot of things that would potentially suggest that this might need to pull back just a little bit further. Of course, I'm not going to be the one that tries to short it for too long on the Nasdaq. That typically doesn't work too well. But if we can get a dip, that'll be the zone of interest. Over on the S&P, next zone of interest on the S&P is just going to be a little bit further down, 4154-ish. I mean, we're still kind of stuck in a sideways range, a little bit of back and forth. The gap down that was created on Sunday was closed in. They filled that up and now came back down again. The rising channel to the upside is obviously not the best looking thing in the world, but I mean, it is what it is. That's just kind of what the market gave us to work with. Got sort of the midline. It could be maybe a multi-tiered channel. It's just kind of gross looking. Oh well. While the market's grinding its way down to the lows, if we calculate what the volume is doing, let's do the volume from the consolidation lows forward and see what they wanted to do with that. Okay, so same thing. They have the POC built up at 4172 quarter, and it's right on top of settlement. S&P is demonstrating the same thing from the volume perspective. That adds even more sentiment to the downside, at least out of the gates. We'll see. Over on gold, I mean, this thing's a mess. Structurally, it's really gross looking. If anything, maybe a megaphone going on now, kind of, sort of. What a mess. Lots of divergence, lots of undertow, a lot of things saying or suggesting that the next pullback likely going to be a bit deeper. If you look at it from the bottom, the overall rotation was off of an L4. That's a qualified reversal off the lows. Is perfect. We've got more movement back to the upside. They crept up into the L1s. L1 buyers sweep up. L1 buyers sweep up. Guess where we are now? We're back to the L1. This is where buyers are going to attempt to try to sweep this thing back to the upside. We've got an L1 trend on our hands. But eventually, those L1 trends pull back, and the next objective, like we talk about in the Academy, is the TUL2, which is a little bit of a deeper pullback, and that is going to start hitting off at around the 1769s to 63s. Just dependent on where the market wants to kind of stick the knife in the floor, as it were. Over on crude oil, I mean, it's a range. There's not really much else that we can say about this thing. It's just a absolute total range. Buy low, sell high. The value is right in the middle. The POC is right in the middle on top of settlement. This isn't a surprise. It's the same thing that all the other indexes are showing. It's just dead stuck. So buy low, stay out of the middle. Over on the euro, the euro has had a monster of a continuation to the upside that does complete a potential secondary leg. One of the big questions when we had this first drive up is, like, okay, sure, great, we've got this giant leg up. It's just going to V-top and go all the way down again. Obviously, that isn't. But what they're looking for is a completionary move, right? They want to finish this drive off. Now, if we look at the initial impulse leg, just this drive up, and we put this over here, we've already gone about 1.5 times that. So that is a fair distance that it's gone through the top. If we look at the overall measured move, I would say before it started really struggling would be about there. So if we're looking for the pure measured move without the struggle, we've also achieved that, which would explain why we're starting to see a little bit of a struggle. Look back historically. Giant rally to the upside. They finally met around that distance. I don't know why that distance, but that's what the market chose. so that's what I got to go with. And from that point, the market had a two-legged correction, went sideways with a micro double bottom, almost a triple bottom, before finally continuing back up. So if we take the information that it was given to us over here and we transpose this to over here, we can see that we're potentially very early in this overall move, and there's still a likelihood that this wants to pull back a little bit further at the very least and put in somewhat of a double bottom, maybe back down towards like the 1.203-ish. As far as the channel structure goes, that's still way down here. Buyers would love to see it dip all the way down there. Not sure it will, though. Bitcoin forming a little bit of a wedge, breaking out of the wedge to the downside, and having quite a bit of difficulty on this rotation to the downside with a heavy rotation off of the... Well, they didn't actually get 65K, did they? They missed 65,000 by just a little bit. The big thing when it comes to crypto that we've been talking about is that Bitcoin loves going in 20s, right? It fell just shy of 20,000 and then it collapsed 70-80% for 3 years, right? So then when it went up, it had movement up to 40, and then from 40, it rotated up to 60. Now we're starting to see some difficulty at 60, the same thing that happened at 40. So if this backs off on the 60 mark, but it demonstrates support and rolls back above 60, then realistically, the likelihood is that we go back up and we try to challenge 80. That would be the next one. It likes going in those 20s. At the moment, we're below 60. That's a problem. Bulls do not like that. And honestly, we were kind of joking about this in the chat room on Discord, but everybody is seemingly like selling all of their other cryptos and just buying Doge with it. I know personally, and I know a lot of people over the weekend and a few people that we're talking to and in the chat room, a lot of us were switching over to Doge for the weekend at the very least, let alone a little bit longer. And that was the only one on 2 occasions that was up on the day. Everything else is down. And now Doge, again, it's up 23%. It's certainly not the only coin that's doing incredibly well. If you look at the coin market cap, there are several other ones that are actually doing better. Link, actually, what was Link, or not Link, Neo, that's what I'm thinking. It made it up to like 130. Holy crap. That's insane. So there are definitely some other ones out there, but I don't know. Bitcoin's looking like it's having some trouble unless the buyers show up sooner than later. On Ethereum, it looks a little bit better. Same situation, ascending wedge, we got the break, they're having some trouble, but the bulls are staying above the moving average cluster. They're not pulling back as far. We're demonstrating better support down here. Again, I still think there's more utility value in Ethereum than there is Bitcoin anyway. But regardless, Ethereum is at least demonstrating a little bit. Right? It's not the best thing in the world. If we look at the crypto sphere on the whole, we can plainly see that my data feed is awful. Hang on a second. Let me reload Coinbase. Good old Coinbase doing Coinbase things. I think I can. Okay. EOS? Come on now. Hang on one second, guys. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. And it looks like the data feed is good. All right, wonderful. So on the EOS side of things, and as we look across the board, there are some obvious distinctions that look very similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum. EOS has failed underneath the moving average cluster. Litecoin has failed underneath the moving average cluster. Link did fail and then immediately rocket ship back up. So you can see if buyers hold up around these 38s, they should still be okay. They're close. They're running into trouble. Bcash holding a little bit higher. I can't. They're over 1,000. Unbelievable. But you can see that's a big zone. They blew past 1,000 and then right back underneath, and now it's acting as resistance. A little bit of trouble. Lumens, a little bit of trouble. Tezos, a little bit of trouble. Right. So the ones that are really doing well are the ones that are kind of the outliers. Right. So if you look at if we bring down Doge as an example on the 15-minute chart, we've got a lot of things. And actually, if we bump out to like a 60-minute, oh no. Not month, 60-minute. So there are a lot of things that are happening here along the way. So basic attention token, right? I think I actually did these on 4-hour charts. We finally had a dip back to volume on BAT, right? So again, we broke way above volume. They built the volume way up here. We broke above it. This is the buyer's chance to buy back in volume at around the $1.20 mark. Bitcoin, they had their, if we zoom out a little bit further, their volume node is a bit further down. I don't think they're done yet. 47.6 makes a lot more sense. On Ethereum, a little further down. Makes more sense around the 1780s. On Litecoin, they had that giant blow off, but the problem for them is their POC is way the heck down at 200 again, which is unsurprising. But it's a problem considering it's at 268. If you look at Bcash, another one that has some drastic problems, that volume node's back at 502. If we scoot this forward a little bit, it doesn't do anything. There's a lot more volume that stepped up in the 813s. That's about it. On ADA, we have a very nice pullback, but the problem for them is they're dipping underneath. So you might have to go back to a bit more accumulation volume to this spike down here in February, and in which they're barely holding on. So Cardano's got some work to do. BNB, BNB waiting for a flush to 265. Doge is still ripping higher, and Doge had the volume shift earlier last night at around 31 cents, although in the chat room you're talking around like 29 to 30 cents. Obviously, huge continuation of the upside over 40 cents. Major objectives getting hit up here from the short-term trader's perspective. But in the longer term, I mean, the implications of this Doge move up are nuts. This could go absolutely catatonic. EOS, from the volume perspective, has a long way to go. 370, that's going to be an issue. So there's definitely some pullback room to go here if the markets can't get going to the upside sooner than later. There are a few that are resting on zones of interest, and Doge is going to be a hot seat button one anyway. We'll see. Long live Doge. If we look at the daily, and we see what's going on from this perspective. Again, unsurprisingly, the last time we had a breakout move above the all-time highs, we struggled around it for 3, 4, 5 days. this is Sunday, so I don't know how, or Friday. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're kind of getting away from it, sort of. It didn't do anything. So if it does pull back again, then, I mean, realistically, the 13,893 zone is going to be those all-time high retests. That's going to be the zone of interest. If it does want to pull back a little bit further from the L perspective, at least, it's only got an L3 rotation. So usually the first pullback after an L3 rotation is only going to be an L1. Well, they haven't quite had that yet. That's going to be down to 13,740s, 730s. We got some room. All-time highs are a little bit further up now. Zooming into the 60-minute chart, looking on the nearer perspective, we're still pulling back. They've gone through the L1 with no remorse. Just didn't let a soul out. Got him in, nothing. Got him in, nothing. Just dunking them the whole way down. So with this momentum to the downside, obviously buyers will eventually try to put in a base here. It's just a matter of where. The bottom just keeps falling out of it, and it's just, this is not a great scenario to try to be BTFDing in. It's a little bit early. Over on the 15-minute, trying to clarify a little bit further, and I mean, here we can see, if we zoom out a little bit, this is what the Nasdaq has been loving to do more recently, where you get these dives down, and then bam, it goes reversing all the way back up. We got this big dive down, but there's no big bars in here, and that's usually the precursor, where we've got 2 or 3 huge candles to the downside. They're huge. Over here, we've got 1, 2, then it found a little bit of sideways, and it still didn't reverse until the next day. So by no means is that an indication to go long, but it's an indication that we might be at least trying to pull out where the bottom is. This is a major zone of support from a structural buyer's perspective. Buyers can buy down here with very low risk, but the reward is very high. So they have kind of the benefit of the doubt down here. That said, it's early, right? We haven't seen any shift. We haven't even seen a higher high, higher low. No, there's nothing. So super early. But this is a definitive zone of support. We'll see if they want to play ball with it. Do you think NASDAQ will make it to 840? Been short since 993. Nice. Make it down to 840? I mean, it's definitely a possibility. Yeah. That said, you know, there are a few things that we talked about along the way, but those things are definitely further out. We're seeing normal movement to start things off, right? We've got the Asian session, which had a 1.5 deviation up, roughly, give or take. And then that rolled into the European session, which usually reverses the Asian session. And in this case, it looks like we're down over 2. Yeah. They went down 2. Now we're down almost 3 deviations from the European session. So the trend is strong so far. And this is pretty common from what we've been seeing historically. If we go backward a little bit, every time we've had the Asian session, the European session reverses it. If they come back, they hold this support. Let's go back a little bit further. Your Asian session reversed into the European session, continuation to the upside, really strong breakout all morning. They finally had a pullback going into 10 o'clock, and that was really the only pullback until 12. So, again, strong continuation back to the upside. We had the Asian session, which, I mean, I guess didn't do anything in this case. So the European session didn't reverse it, per se. So that one, not really any similarities there. Here we go. European session reversed back to the upside. Bulls maintained it all the way the rest of the day. The only pullback that they had was 10:20. Well, it pulled back a little further. It pulled back all the way until around 11:30. So this is giving us some clues, right? Historically, what are we seeing? When we've got this giant breakout above the highs of the Euro session after there's been a reversal of the Asian session, there's usually a pullback into around 10:30, 11:30. But that means that it's going up until then, right? Or at least up to sideways. So while this market's pulling back, what do we have? We have an Asian session move up. European session dove it down. The anticipation is that we're not going to find a bottom until 10:30 to 11:30. So we're probably going to keep falling to the downside. And there'll probably be a nice pullback going into around 10:30 or so, looking for a continuation down. So it's sell everything mode until they put in a little bit more of a bottom. Kind of awkward, but historically, that's what it's at least telling us. Now, if we go from the highs all the way down to the full-blown reversal lower, that was an L1. And when they broke out, they've got another L1, and they're trying to get that trend to keep going. All of my charts are messed up. Like, none of the indicators are loading properly. Is anyone else having issues in Ninja this morning, or is it just me? It's probably just me. Typical. Maybe I lost connection or something in the middle. That's usually the only time it does that. I think we're good now. I mean, it's no surprise to see my Coinbase connection messed up. Whoa, blown away by that one. Would have never guessed. Gold pulling back a little bit further. Still no bottom. Knife still cruising through the sky, waiting to find a floor. Ninja's working fine for me. Okay, cool. It was probably just a loss of data last night. We've been having some weird on-off storms, so it wouldn't be a surprise. I think my phone just told me it was going to start raining in 15 minutes and then stop 5 minutes after again. It's just like, okay, cool. Sounds good. Dogecoin pulling back a little bit now after failing to breach the highs of 45 cents. Like we had talked about in the Discord room, on the chat side of things, the 40-cent area is a major profit objective. Personally, for me, that was an area that I was already kind of pulling off the gas pedal a little bit. And that's what we were talking about in chat last night, along with a few other zones of interest, which it bounced pretty nicely. It's just this downside pressure on crypto makes me a little bit concerned, you know? Got about 5 minutes until the open. It's right around the corner. We have a very obvious 3-press dive to the downside. Not so obvious undertow on the lows, aside from the most recent. It's got about 5 minutes until the open, right around the corner, just hovering. Market's not really doing much. Nasdaq looks like it's getting poised for a deeper pullback. But again, we're not expecting to see a low put in until 10:30 or 11 o'clock. And actually, it's hard to do on tick charts because time is not a thing. But if we go to... Let's go to the Nasdaq 15-minute. I'm going to put a horizontal line so I don't forget. And I'm going to put that line at 10:30. Put that on all charts. And then put this on 11:30. There. That's the reversal slot. Right there. Actually, you know, maybe let's not put those on all charts because that's going to drive me freaking crazy. There we go. Deeper pullback is expected. Again, an L2 would make a lot of sense. Whether or not they'll actually be able to get that, we'll see. But the downside continuation, at least. We've got the L1. L1 sellers are going to be looking to continue this L1 trend down. Remember, the last two ones have been L1s. So, likely going to keep trying to go. A little more continuation up as we get closer to the open. As far as levels on the way down, I'd be much more interested in at least the top of the L1 because we've got some congestion there. If we look at the overall volume profile on the way down, I'll start from the top, that's fine. We can see that they built up a huge cluster of volume up here in the 14,030s. I have to assume, given that the move that we've seen so far, that these were buyers attempting to get another leg up. That totally failed. So given that that would be the assumption, at least for now, I want to see what are they doing now. Accumulation. So they're trying to buy into this move lower, which is no surprise. The Nasdaq loves V-bottoming at the open. But I'm not expecting that V-bottom until, again, 10:30, 11:30, somewhere in there. So this is at least giving us a clue to expect somewhere more back towards like the L2, maybe even the L3 with that giant VVP they left back there around the 14,000s. Ugh, I do not want to mess around with 14K all day today, though. Hey, David, how's it going? It's funny that you mentioned that a few years ago I was tracking that time period. Happens so often, thought it was a type of trade to look for. Definitely. But keep in mind, it's a time-based repetition. Time-based repetitions are typically short-lived. They go in cycles a lot more frequently. So it'll show up for like 3 or 4 days, and then it'll stop. and then all of a sudden, everything that looked like it was following along perfectly stops doing that. So I like keeping track of it as long as they're following along. Right now, they keep doing it, where the Asian session reverses into the European session, and it carries on a strong trend until 10:30, 11:30. So given that that's a repetition of what we've seen historically, I have to assume that that's the intent, at least for today. Whether or not that's what's going to happen, we'll have to kind of wait and see as we get more info. But that's my objective for now, because that's what it's been doing more recently. Now, today, if that totally breaks down, then the next time I'm not necessarily going to be looking for that as quick, So. Stock exchange opens, POC shift down, 13,965. That shift down happened at the open. That's not really a big surprise. Sellers trying to get a bit more continuation lower. We are at the open, so volatility is assumed to be very high. The goal is for sellers to return back down to the lows. A retest of this L1 zone will be a zone of interest for sellers to try to press back down from. Nice continuation drive. They got to keep going down. Beautiful drive down. Excellent scalp move off of that retest on L1. Bango bango. Love that. Fantastic. Now, the top of the L1 I'm less intrigued by because we've already seen the attempt from the bottom of the L1 try and fail. So if it comes back down, I'm actually more interested to look for a potential long scalp off of the bottom of L1, knowing that those sellers are a bit nervous. As we encroach on L2, there is an obvious VVP up in the zone that sellers will attempt to push back on, at least initially for an attempted scalp. Not getting that drive down I want. I'm going to jump ship on that one. I do not like the way that that's playing ball. That looks like it's playing some dirty ball, and I'm not, I know the sellers are going to want to try to take this back lower, but now it's starting to look like maybe the top of an L3 or a bit more trappy, kind of vindictive price action to be a bit more beneficial. That 14K is right there. See if we can get a dip back for buyers to pick it up. We're cycling off the lows. I would still rather be a buyer closer to 1030, but yep, good call to get out. Getting closer to the L3, but now that we've got so much conviction to the upside, I don't really want to be the first one to the party. L2 sellers just got stomped. See if they can get a scalper's pullback to retest. Sellers held that L3 really well. We've only got the first 2.5 minutes beyond us. POC just shifted again. Whoa. 13,990 POC shift. 2 minutes left for this first 5-minute bar. Now coming back up into the L3s. But that POC just shifted up. Now I don't want to sell at all. I want to see that dip back down to be a buyer. This could also potentially be demonstrating that buyers have exited a break-even or are hovering around break-even plus. Because remember, this was accumulation volume at first, and their averages would have been around here. And now the POC shifts up when we get around this area. That seems a bit suspicious, don't you think? It's if this starts dipping back down again, I have to assume that if there are any buyers who are still in, they're not going to want to hold much longer. Right now, the buyers and look at the volume coming in. We're back. Everybody's jumping ship now. They're like, oh, thank you, finally. See if they can get back down to the bottom of that L2. That's the zone that last trapped everyone. I took the exit early, thankfully. Jeez. More bullish continuation attempted to the upside. Gold maybe sticking the knife in the floor? Maybe. Still kind of early. Now this L4 back towards settlement, bottom of the European range around 1420. Everything's potentially stacking up for a very nice lower high drive back to the downside. The bear pressure's still on. Getting back to indecision does mean, though, that when they get back to the lows, it's less inclined to want to trend. Nasdaq also, from the 15-minute perspective, coming back and challenging that volume POC cluster at 1410. Again, this is a big zone of resistance. I know it looks really strong to the upside, but that's a toughie. Sellers look like they're really trying to get this thing to congest and do something here. Or even buy or something. I mean, something. All of a sudden, it just kind of fell apart. Another dive back down to 13,990, that volume test. Maybe. All right, well, we do have our first 5-minute bar finally beyond. I can't believe it's only been 5 minutes. The volume cluster on the S&P is at 69.25. And the volume cluster on the Nasdaq, wow, very obvious at 90. So from a scalper's perspective, from an options perspective, a lower risk perspective, shorts will be looking for shorts inside here. This is a zone of definitive interest. Whoops. Could potentially also look at the micro Nasdaq as a way to build into a longer-term short off of this L4 if you're looking to mitigate risk but don't have access to options, as an example. There are a lot of ways, but it's still fairly early. We haven't seen lower highs, lower lows, nothing like that. There's an obvious amount of congestion going on. So the L4 sellers are attempting to hold. Still super early, but they're trying. So far, they've barely been challenged. Crude oil attempting its breakout to the upside. The highs of resistance on crude are going to be at around 63.66. Realistically, it's probably not going to break much above that. From a scalper's point of view, you've got 66, 76, 86. Same mentality as kind of like the S&P on crude as well for a backfill. There's not really a whole lot of room, so the objective's like 10 ticks maybe. Kind of disappointing. So crude oil at 66 has a zone of interest. 76, 86 on up to the resistance zone. Just the range highs. Tested, but so far no fill. Yeah, you like that? They've barely been challenged. More bears attempting to go to the downside here. Short hits on crude at 66, looking for 56. Next area, 76, 86, just fading the range highs. The break point, or the point that a lot of traders likely aren't going to want to see it break above, would be the highs. That would be the definitive. I mean, yeah, like a little poke above, that happens, but otherwise sellers are just looking for this to fade back off on crude off of 66. 56 is the first objective, although it could fall a little bit further. Seeing a dive back down towards like 31. I could see something like that. Let me get this. Up there. There we go. Sure. That little flush that happened on Doge seems like buyers picked it right back up again. More sell-side conviction. Sellers are really trying to push this down on the Nasdaq. This lower high and this potential trap that they're trying to gear up on this wick, that's what you usually see before a push down, lower high, and another drop. So far it hasn't continued, though. Nasdaq bulls look like they're trying to step back up again ahead of the L3. Crude oil came close. Just needs a little bit more juice. That bear bar down on the Nasdaq, that's a shot for the sellers to try to take it. Their breakpoint would be above the highs, and this is kind of their last ditch, because if these sellers fail, then it's going to be game over for them. Downside objective would be getting back down to the L1s. Immediately poked above the highs. I'll use this small little pullback to reduce the loss by about half, actually. They triggered above the bear bar. That shouldn't have happened. I'm not willing to give them a huge amount of room. No thanks. The reason, again, the reason why I like that is if you're shorting here and they do trigger that bear bar, although above this might just be a trap. It could very well be. You know how the market likes to roll. But if they go underneath this and we do have some very severe follow through, like I said, that's usually where you get that breakdown and a continuation down to at least challenge some of these stuck L1s. But they got the bear bar and failed. Went back up, lost interest. Come on, crude. Just a couple more. Thank you. All right. Crude hits its objective. Just 10. I mean, that's all crude oil's really offering up right now, but I'll take it. 10's better than 0. Weak bear bar. If they follow this up with another strong bull bar, then we will have had even further proof that shorts have failed, and they haven't been able to get out at break even. You can see this dive down came close, but they missed them. It's important information. All right, now they've been given a chance to get out at break even. Now we got to see what they do. Choppy sloppy, huh? Bitcoin catching a little bit of a bounce back up. Same with Ethereum. Euro, man, on the 15-minute chart, that bear bar in the euro scares the crap out of me. I don't want anything to do with wanting to go long against that. Yikes. S&P on the 5 minutes attempting to get this to go bull engulfing. There's only 40 seconds left. All right. Sellers are a bit on the back foot here. Really strong bull bar back to the upside is going to trigger longs back in, trying to get this to go back up. It's forcing them to buy a little bit high. Whoa! I'm just kidding. Never mind. There it goes. Jeez, oh Pete. That was 500. I mean, keep in mind, a tick chart. One tick is one trade. That was 500 trades that took place in under like a second. Now it's a twin reversal. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. Ooh, that's a big problem for longs. If they get another bear bar that looks like that, not many buyers are going to want to hang out anymore. These are some strong bear bars on the 500. This is kind of the response that I wanted over here. They just had to get this trap first. Maybe. Hasn't broken a new low yet. There they go. That's another really strong bull bar. Jeez. Really good bear bar, but very low. It's still early. We've got another hour until things start kicking off. Or at least that's the correlative time. Back to the L2, back to the volume node at 990, although I would like to see it get a test down into the lower side of the L2. Preferably into the L1 if we can. That's where the major swing long takes place. Honestly, the best case scenario, right? Let's say we can get the absolute best, and we've got this is a tick chart, so it's a little bit funny, but let's just pretend this is 11:30 to 10:30, right? That's that zone. The best opportunity or the best location, if we can get it to line up nicely, would be a dive down right into that sweet spot where we get that broken L1 retest to allow all the earlier shorts out, get them out of break even. Right? Reverse the market back up and catch everything at the right time as well. Then you've got a big 1-2 punch. It's a little bit early so far. On the daily chart, we did dip below the previous low of day. And buyers seemingly so far have picked it back up. Another really strong bull bar. I'm going to grab this long for a continuation back up, mainly because the risk, again, is so small. See if buyers can get this to continue back up to the upside or if they roll and fail. They're still maintaining support off the 990s. They're failing to get the objective to the downside, which is why I like this potential roll to the highs of this failure, but they're not getting the move. I'll reduce a little bit, but this 990 volume is still holding. S&P also backing off to the volume cluster. Very nice slide down. They couldn't quite make it down to that L2, though. It's a good attempt. They've almost got it. Lordy, lordy, these candles are showing up out of nowhere. See if they can pop back through the 9650s. Having a hard time reducing a little bit further. $990 volume. That's the first 5. All right, I'm out. Man, what a fist fight. I'm gonna have to wait for something a little bit cleaner. Basically just sitting at break even on the day for the most part. No big moves, nothing that really has sparked the flame. And all of the concerns, every time, you know, that's one thing I know it feels like, and this is more of a psychological check, especially for traders who are a little bit newer. I know it feels like today just keeps punching you, or at least me, in the teeth. Every time I try to get something going, it goes a little bit, then kind of backs up and fails. And goes a little bit, and then backs up and fails. Another bull bar back to the upside. I'll give it another shot. But, you know, the important part is that we're keeping the risk very light so that when the market does eventually move, you're only you're trying to get about 2 to 1 on average. It's just, you've got to give it some wiggle room. It's the Nasdaq. It's hovering around major zones of support. So play the risk a little bit light. Eventually, it will get that big move. It probably won't be till like 6 p.m., it feels like. And again, we know what we're fighting right now. We're trying to get these longs going, but it's not the right time yet. We still have another 30, 40 minutes to go. Which is why I'm only going with 1 or 2, or when it just goes a little bit in, then taking it as a scalp. Picking up a little bit more in the pullback, taking that off as a scalp, because we're not at the right time yet. Got another 30, 40 minutes to go. I like this for another continuation pop. But, I mean, honestly, if this one doesn't get going, I can't see the buyers wanting to stick around for too much longer. Couldn't get the other one down there at the 90s. not enough. All right, I'm done dicking around with this area. I'm going to wait for the next zone at around 971.50. It's just not pulling back at the right time. And obviously, they're just going to mess with people. So you either sit... There's two approaches to this. You either just sit through this and let the market fiddle-dink around, or you just don't trade in it. Otherwise, you're going to get chopped up. One nice pulse down to those L1s, 970s, 965s. That'd be incredible. So remember, a lot of those shorts are still stuck. If they do want to finally trigger one of these bull bars, that's cool. That's fine. Awesome. But I'm going to wait for them to trigger and then grab the next pullback. It's just not worth it anymore. They're not getting the continuation, and every single attempt up over the last, 6 times has been a failure, which means this one I'm not taking is going to be the successful one, but that's fine. It's not worth the risk. Good old Murphy. Him and his stupid law. Now, these are a lot of times, these are the ones that will trap a lot of people even more severely, even if it is the start of a big move up, because it'll get FOMO going. It'll make people think like, oh crap, I'm going to miss this. This is the one that's actually going. Oh no, I skipped this one. I'm such an idiot. And then they buy at the top. Then it pulls back on them. Then they get stopped out. Then it goes back up. Right? It doesn't matter if you pick the right... that's why when you know that it's being vindictive, when you know that it's being a chop fest, just sidestep it. Let it do whatever it needs to do and get it over with. Come back later. Look at this thing. Giant bear bar right back down again. S&P has 2 identically sized candles from top to bottom, although the bodies are different size. Sellers will be utilizing this bear bar as a swing short that just showed up on the tick chart. They will be utilizing that as a swing short with stops above the highs. Low probability, obviously, lots of crap in the way, but very high reward. More of an options play, in my opinion. Honestly, same with the long down here. But I would still prefer it to get down to like the 970s, at least. Getting close. Nice retest back at 13,990. Continuing to see higher lows, although that twin reversal off the top is nerve-wracking, to say the least. The other notable thing from the 60-minute perspective, at least, is that if there were buyers who were trying to pick up those L1s, remember how we were talking about they got dumpstered? They're being given a chance right now to get out of break-even plus. It appears as though they're taking it. I would still rather be a buyer down here. 10 o'clock in 3 minutes. $971s, 63s. I mean, this whole area down here is going to be a big zone of interest. Scalpable off of the retest of the L2 as well. And that might be all there is until we get down there, is just scalps. If Doge is going to pull back for like buyers to reload on it, I don't really see a reason to be interested in Doge in the least until, I mean, there's a 15-minute chart, so shorter term. 31 cents. I don't see a reason to be. There is a big VVP fill back at 35 cents, though. Bulls just, man, they do not want to give up this 990, do they? This is the perpetual trap machine. The L4 sellers are still fine, side note. They're sitting there hunky-dory. Bulls trying to step back up again. Really nice bull bar to try to get things going. Kind of curious to see if scalpers want to pick up a retest of the 990s as a quick little bounce. Jeez, yeah, quick little bounce. I didn't even get filled. Okay. Just kidding. One good dive. 10 o'clock, top of the hour, right around the corner here. Even though there's no news today, sometimes the top of the hour can still throw things around a little bit. A strong bull bar here is kind of like the final trap with that bear bar attempt down. So if they close a strong bull bar here, that's kind of like the breakout pullback. Nice bull bar. We got to see him trigger, though. Very important secondary part of that. All right, they did trigger. First continuation objective is going to be back up. I mean, realistically, high closes make sense. That's a good enough first objective, actually. Nice little pop. See if they want to follow through the secondary. A lot of times they will vindict break-evens on this move, so keep that in mind. We're still not out of the woods yet. It's still the Nasdaq being the Nasdaq. Ooh, okay. Right back up is a great sign. Very good sign. There we go. Got to see if they can challenge the 11s. We're breaking back above. Big zone of resistance going to be in the 9s. Really? All right. I'm going to jump ship on that bear bar. That might just be a trap to get everyone out before another continuation back to the upside. But again, I'm not going to give it the risk. We haven't had clean enough proof for me to do so. Nice first continuation up and then just fell flat on its face on the second part. S&P pulling back pretty hard here. Got some weights getting strapped onto the bottom. Retest of volume, 13,990. Although, again, I mean, this whole zone. This zone, farther down, right? I mean, we've got to be hitting the L1s. That's the point of interest. And this is why I didn't want to stay around. Jeez. Look at that bad boy go. Overextend down to the L1s, and you've got my interest. They have gotten to the lows of that L2. Wow. Let's take a look at what's going on from the volume perspective. From the top down, the POC was actually further down here in the 966.50. So if the market does pull back, that adds even more weight. Jeez, oh Pete, that adds even more weight to an L1 bounce. Again, it's more of a swing trade. So it would be, in the 70s to 60s with a long intention back up to the highs, potentially even further, at least back up towards settlement. So if you're looking at it from a risk-reward standpoint, buyers who are buying in with a stop underneath the lows, I mean, even if they bought at the top, the 2-to-1 is still just above settlement. So I guess a further optimized entry point would be a little bit further down to compensate for settlement. I'd put it around 69-ish. Very nice slide back to the downside. Now remember, this is the Nasdaq. We know how the Nasdaq rolls. The Nasdaq knows everybody on the planet has their stop underneath the low. That's why I'm approaching this with the mentality of a swing trade. This isn't a scalp. This isn't a get in, get out real fast, 5, 10 ticks, whatever. This is a get in and probably have to hang out for a little while. If they do break through the lows, then it will be a clue where if it does return to anywhere above like L1, L2, then it's probably a chance to get out. S&P with a big bear bar to the downside and some candle gapping. 61.75 will potentially find some sellers, but just remember the overall context here. They're overextending into a big zone of support. I mean, look at the last time the market did something like this. That was the low until like 4 o'clock. They're back. Crude oil finally waking up and continuing a little bit further now. So if you were waiting for the larger secondary objective, then 31, 32 in that area, eventually on crude. All right, so they did crack the lows. Now I want to pay attention as to how they crack the lows, because remember, we had a pullback all the way to L4. Decisive break. We have an L1 overextension. So now my job, now that I know that my earlier trade looking for a higher low is wrong, building into the swing trade, now my job is to exit the earlier trade and bottom weight my average, because I still like the long down here and we're getting closer to that time frame. Right? So I still love the long. I love everything about I've loved the long all morning. They're just making it really expensive to get the long. So I'm going to eat a little bit of the loss initially to try to draw my average down and accept the loss on the initial portion. I would like to try to get my average further down to like the 25s, but this is only the first point. almost down to the L2 deviation lower. Down to the L2 deviation lower. So now that it's down here, it should be a bit easier to get my average down in the L1, L2s. But I would like to see it pop up a little bit first. I'm not going to take a full loss on that one when I know it's going to bounce anyway. So now what we can do, because again, we know that the long has failed. From a swing perspective, a little bit of a different management. But from the overall failure perspective, they broke down through the lows, which is what I didn't want. Obviously, a lot of traders took stops on that move, which is one way to approach it. The other way is looking for the bottom weighting on the larger time frame. Again, we already know we're in a major zone of support. I like it down here. The first initial trade was wrong. So I'm exiting that one, but I'm just entering a new one because I like the swing down here. Is this why you say it's better for options? Yeah, 100%. Because when you're doing it on the future side of things, there's a lot of management, right? That's when we jokingly say, well, it's kind of expensive seats up front. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, you've got to eat the loss on the way down if you're trying to build your position. Unfortunately for me, I don't have Goldman Sachs infinite money hack active. I haven't figured that one out yet. I don't even know where to put the cheat codes in. So it's I can't do that, right? So unfortunately, just buy. This isn't crypto. Like I can't just BTFD to zero because zero happens a lot faster on leveraged instruments. So in this case, you just have to kind of work your way down. Now, let's say as an example, in a different scenario, there wasn't another reason to be long here, right? If we didn't have this time zone and all of this major support stacking up in the same spot, then there wouldn't be averaging in to bring my average down. It would just be exiting, right? Totally different scenario. We're not even in the time zone yet. Still got a little bit of time. And we've got a big bear bar down. So on an option side of things, it would still be a loss if it broke down this much. But your initial cost, I mean, it depends on if you're like the options on the QQQs. If the VIX is relatively high, might be still a little bit expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than multiple contract losses on trying to build in a position on futures initially. QQQ put options worked. Nice work. 44.5 ROI %. Nice. You gotta love options, right? It's a great move. That L4 it responded so aggressively. All right, I've got my average down around the right place, although a little on the light side. I would prefer a few more. Upside objective initially would be back up into the 960s, but realistically, if we look at the overall volume from the top down first, we know that sellers bottom weighted their volume, right? They built in. This is what we were talking about when the market rolled back up again. We saw them build the volume and these three failed highs. That's why I gave up for so long inside of here. They tried accumulating and they failed. And when it rolled back over again, that created a scenario where everybody started jumping ship and giving up. Once that give up move happened, then it slid through the bottom. And if we include all of that to the lows, now we can see, I mean, it's fairly obvious there's a big VVP here. That's where all of the stops were hit underneath the low. What a shock. Now they're finding a bit of balance. So if they're going to find a balance point, a lot of times they'll do it in a few different ways. But when they hit a big stop point, let's say as an example, you've got a big swing low. There's a big stop run point underneath here. The market will come down. It will hit them. It will build a new volume node and then go right back up and then hold it as if it were support a little bit later on. Now, the other side of things is you get that move down, they consolidate, and they form a little bit of a range, and then continue the breakdown again until they find another range. And usually, that secondary one, by the time they find a low, that's where they start going sideways, so it's a bit early. That looks to be the case right now, where they're trying to chop down a little bit further and create a little bit more of a sideways range. This is the Nasdaq. This is the understanding that the Nasdaq is a vindictive SOB and it's going to go further than you want it to. Crude oil, I feel like crude oil hasn't even moved. They're pulling back to the settlement. Price settlement hovering around 63.21. We're a little after 10 o'clock. There's not really much that's happening so far. Nasdaq's just pulling down hard and trying to stop everyone out before the very likely V bottom, which typically always happens these days. Still a bit early, but we are getting closer to that zone. Right around 10:30 to 11:30 is where they start plotting that bottom. Historically, of course. The 15-minute POC from previous is, if we go a little bit further out, it depends on where you start it from. The original leg from like the bottom that was plotted on the 14th to the highs. If you're looking at that volume node, then actually, no, I'm sorry. You have to go back before that. Oh, no, they did shift it before that. Now, they had the POC all the way up at the top the whole way. If we go back a little bit further to this previous leg, back on the 9th. The POC's still up there. If they were to dive down and find support down here, again, the major zones of interest would be back down towards like the 860s on some of these larger gap points. If they start breaking through this zone, which they're really trying. Crude oil, man, finally waking up a little bit, back down to settlement. Took its sweet time to get there. Jeez. As far as upside objectives, I mean, realistically, from the bigger picture, if we're looking at this from the reversal perspective, which typically happens around this period of time, when it does, it usually reverses all the way back up to the highs. So if that's the clue and we're looking for upside objectives, then, I mean, realistically, initial targets that are, I mean, at least back to value would make sense, if not back up to the POC, if not back up. Well, swing highs would be kind of stupid. Let's go ahead of the swing highs just so, front running and all that. Further obvious objective, right, it's settlement. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got Euro session lows, Euro session highs. There's a VVP right at the base, so I would rather focus on that. These are getting clumped together. I'm going to drop that one. Man, it's hard to miss that giant VVP hovering in the 43s, though. Let's do it this way. That way it's kind of safeguarded on all fronts. It's a little bit narrower, but that'll work. Lots of congestion up here in the 14s, 13s. See if they can pop this top. Nice divergence on the 15. Let me see here. Oh, up at the top. Yeah, nice. I gotcha. I gotcha. Sorry, it took me a second. Hey, Shum, how's it going? Lots of arrows. Yeah, I was trying to, we were talking about how all morning the market is wanting to dip and find a reversal area, historically at least around 10:30, 11:30 in that area. But it just was not going down. The sellers just couldn't get the job done. So I was trying to buy early, and it just didn't want to go. Bought a little bit, win a little bit, bought a little bit, win a little bit, gave a little back. Just kind of a fist fight most of the morning until it finally opened up to where I've been able to try to build into a longer-term position to hold on for the rotation. But it was a fist fight the whole way down, that's for sure. Are you okay now? I wasn't ever not okay. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Psychologically, are you damaged? Yes and no. Yeah, no, I'm still sitting in the negative from the original build on the way down, but obviously you can see it's still very early to the party. They've only just begun plotting higher highs, so I'm not anticipating this being done fighting by any means, which is why I'm still reducing on these pops, building on the drops, reducing on the pops. I have my orders out there in case it does want to go, but I'm not expecting it to go right this second yet, you know. Generally speaking, though, where we are on the larger perspective, I very much want to be long from here. It's the right timing, it's the right zone, it's the right I mean, everything is lining up very nicely. The first one didn't work. The secondary one usually comes into play. And so far they've been playing. they got to finish the job, you know? They're not going to give me that dip back down, are they? It's an incredible long signal from down there. I mean, if they do take it higher, that's a beautiful bull bar off the lows. We do have the L3 dip. Bottom of the L3 dip. Almost made it to the L4s. L4s are where the earlier sellers got stuck back on the 15th. Wasn't really given a chance to get more, so I've just got to kind of hang out. See if they want to get a quick little snapback. You know how the Nasdaq likes to roll. Bada boom. Yep. Very nice breakout. Very nice pullback. Continuation back to new highs. One potential that does stand out is a possible 3-press top. I'm going to mitigate against that just in the chance that they do get a pullback. I've got my limits down here as well because I would very much like to buy in again more. But it's just a matter of if they're actually going to dip back. Leave these last 3 to go. So while we're going into training time, feel free to get those questions in. We'll get those covered for you. Otherwise, just kind of babysitting the Nasdaq, testing the top of the 3-press wedge. I'm not going to hold. I mean, I have to take something there. So it's just one of those things. But if it can pull back, I do still love the long down here. It's a great area, great timing, great everything. So, outside of that, the only other one that we had anything on was crude oil. That was that rejection fading the highs. I mean, almost perfect. It went a heck of a lot further than I thought it was going to go. I thought it was just going to be a quick little 10, 15 tick move. That thing dove all the way down to settlement. Not much else really going on, though. Market pulling back just a little bit, kind of hovering inside the value area. Honestly, it looks like they're about to shift the POC down if they keep maintaining this support here in the 920s. That's nutty. Given the movement so far being a little bit, I mean, they're responding still to these bear moves. I'm going to pull my orders back just a little further. I'd rather get some vindictive entries instead of the aggressive ones. Seems like it might still be a bit early to the party. If they ever give a pullback, jeez. Ethereum, Bitcoin, cryptos as a whole catching some bearish momentum again. Oof, across the board, getting whacked. I've already taken profit at the wedge high. It doesn't make much sense to do it again. I've already got less than I want. It's not much of a difference anyway. It's only a couple points. Yeah, I saw NEO went up to 130 over that was nuts. What a crazy rip. They were like the only ones that were bullish over the weekend. It was Doge and, well, NEO was negative for a little while, but then popped right back up. So it was like everything else was negative, but Doge, NEO, I think, oh, there's some oddball coins out there too, I'm sure, but just out of morbid curiosity. Where's Doge at on the old market cap? 5 again. Challenging Ripple. Golly gee willikers, what happened to Tether? Holy crap. Tied to $1, yeah. Number 5. NFT? What the heck is this? Just notice this little portion there. Oh, it's a clickable thing. I'm looking down like, what? NFTs are up 12%? What are you talking about? Oh, okay. These are just the NFT market. Sorry. Disregard my stupidity. Okay. I'm waiting for L4s, L5s. Yeah, a lot of them are dipping back to volume, but a lot of them are missing the volume, and I think that's why we're seeing continued downward momentum. Bigger pullbacks just make more sense right now. Except on Doge. Sell everything by Doge. Doge Moon. Much wow. The objective for the Nasdaq is, as you see on the screen, I'm looking for it to rotate back up to settlement and potentially based on longer term implications. I would like to buy more to try to hold on for a high of day and potential all-time highs rally for a couple more days, if possible. That does create a bit of a problem, though. Obviously, if I'm long on the futures, I can't scalp the futures. So if I'm still long going into tomorrow, we haven't had this happen yet because good old NASDAQ likes whipping me out in the middle of the night when I'm not paying attention. But if I am still long going into tomorrow, which would be a freaking miracle at this point, then I mean, we might have to end up just scalping on the micros. Which there's nothing wrong with either. There's plenty of volume there. The volume on the micros way more than the mini. It's just worth less. Yeah, and then keep in mind this weekend is the VIP webinar. That's at 10 o'clock on Saturday. The link for that is in the VIP zone. If you go over to SSFTG, you'll see that inside there. We're going to be covering, if I can speak. We'll be covering the volume nodes and order volume profile, creating major zones of interest. It's going to be a really, really interesting one. You could also utilize... I can't speak to save my freaking life. Hang on. You can also utilize 2 accounts. That's totally fine too. As long as you have access to the 2 accounts. Yep. I know some folks in here have been grandfathered in. That is an option, yeah. I'm not a huge fan of doing it that way, just because I know a lot of people can't, and it makes it even more complicated to try to figure out what the heck's going on. Plus, every time I do it, I accidentally take a trade on the wrong account, doing the wrong thing, and it's too confusing. It causes too many problems. So it's definitely a possibility, but there's a lot of switching back and forth. And it can, even if you're not switching back, like if you had two different charts, which is what we did last time, I still messed up and still did something stupid. So you can never get around the human element, I guess. or at least my human element. Yeah, the VIP webinars, in any webinar that we do like that, is always recorded, because I know not everybody can show up on a Saturday. Saturdays I try to do it earlier in the morning, but if you live in the UAE, it's not exactly Saturday morning. So they're always recorded. You'll see those recordings down in the VIP zone. Actually, let me just show you. It doesn't show any links or anything like that, so it's not going to hurt my feelings. Of course, I'm probably not logged in again. But if you go into the VIP zone in the top left here, that will bring you in to, right? Like the most recent members webinar was right here. And this one, I don't know why I didn't really type the topic, but it was a Saturday stream. And then this one, you'll see right there, utilizing. So when this one's done, this one will get pushed down here, and you'll be able to watch it from there. So. I've juggled 3 sim accounts and have traded in my live account by accident more than one. Oh yeah, for sure. It's super easy to do. If you accidentally leave the accounts section selected in the chart trader and you hit the up arrow or down arrow trying to move the chart, and then you accidentally change your account, you don't realize, and you place a trade. It happens to the best of us because it happens so easily. It's very easy to make a mistake like that. So. But I'm glad you understand what I'm talking about, because it's, man, or even worse, right? You think you're on your live account and then you throw it on the sim, and of course that was like the best trade of the friggin' month, and you're like, oh, wonderful. I'm just gonna go for a drive and clear my mind real quick. So it's just not worth it. Too confusing. Too many chances for human error. More than anything else. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, so that's going to do it. Done that too. Oh, yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it. Hopefully you had a great Monday. I'm still sitting on kind of the back foot from the earlier drive down, although it's doing a lot better now. Looking for a continuation to maintain this long going into tomorrow, and assuming that this is going to be, even if it does come back down, short-lived. More likely a quick bounce off of the lows. If it does break down through the lows with heavy conviction, my average is very low-weighted. So the work that I was doing earlier was not for nothing, because if it does break down, it should be very easy to escape relatively easily as well. But the upside objective is very high. I've only got the 3, so that's what I've got to roll with. But if it does pull back, I'll look for more accumulation into the lows for that pop back up to all-time highs. See if we can, stay long until tomorrow. Never know. One of these times is bound to happen, right? Anyway, that's going to do it. I hope you had a great day of trading, and we will see you all tomorrow, right? Enjoy, rest up. If I miss any questions, shoot me an email. I'll get you covered from there. Have a great one. We'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.